How's it going, man?
Doing good, doing good. Really nice to have you here. Okay, so I'm just gonna
Yes,
waffle on a bit before we start. So you'll just have to sit
please
there
waffle.
pretty for a bit.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, sure.
So today's gonna be the second in our series of 6 interviews that we'll be doing leading into the summer guitar festivals in BC this year. That'll be held from July 4th to 7th in Kelowna, and then July 11th to 14th in Vancouver, which is where you'll find Daniel. You can find more information about them and how to register at vancouverguitar.org. And also, there's still a few days left to get the early bird registration discount for the Vancouver Festival. So if you're interested, apply before June 1st. So, anyways, today we have a very special guest. I've been hyping him up all week during our regular streams as the Canadian classical guitar expert on
Oh,
musicians'
jeez.
performance anxiety. And everyone's been really looking forward to the interview. So, without
Hmm.
further ado, I'd like to introduce Daniel Ramjattan. Uh, Me and Daniel actually met about 100 years ago or something during the COVID pandemic online here at Twitch, and I know a few of my longtime
Somewhere in the
viewers.
void.
Yeah, yeah, that like
Somewhere.
nebulous time period that no one knows where the time went.
Yes.
But yeah, so actually, a few of my longtime viewers, I think, still remember the concerts for the End of Time series that Daniel used to run. It was a really cool program where musicians from all over the world could have a platform to perform online. And actually, the first time we met is because I was playing in that program. Daniel invited me, and I was interviewed by him. So it's kind of fun to have the tables turned this time around. We get to
Hmm.
interview him back.
Yes.
So, as I've mentioned, Dr. Ramjattan is an expert on performance anxiety. He did his doctorate on the subject at the University of Toronto, just like Luis from the interview the other day. And now he's the professor at Wilfrid Laurier University. And on top of that, also has quite the extensive performing career, performing throughout North America and Europe and Japan while premiering dozens of new works for guitar. And he's also quite well known for giving lectures and workshops across Canada at various universities and guitar festivals, such as the Vancouver Classical Guitar Festival that we mentioned earlier. So get a ticket if you like what you hear in this interview today and you want to see it live. Right. So I was planning this interview mostly going to be about mindful practicing and performance anxiety and mental health, all the things that you are very familiar with. And I think these are topics that are really important for being a musician in the long term. And not enough people get the chance to be exposed to them. So since we have this good opportunity, I think it'd be nice to have another avenue to just get the word out about these specialties of yours. All good?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
It's a really important topic. It's like a for me, I think there's three things that we need to learn as musicians. There's three kind of pillars. And one of them is just not there in most pedagogy. And the first two are obvious. It's technique and musicality.
Mm-hmm.
It's being able to understand the mechanics of what you're doing and be able to execute the tasks you're trying to do on the instrument. And then there's the stylistic understanding, how to express yourself in the way that is appropriate to the style, and how to be musical, and to express yourself and tell a story. And then there's this whole other avenue. It's like, how do I make the version of myself that I've seen in the practice room come to life when
Mm-hmm.
I'm on stage, and actually be coherent with the person that I am in the practice room. And that's really challenging. I think that's something that not a lot of people are studying enough. And it's really amazing that I've done all these lectures like McGill and all in U of T and all these places, and because all these profs have invited me to their studios to teach their studios, or to do lectures of their studios. And it always strikes me because I'm not talking about something really nuanced. I'm not talking about this rare Baroque composer that only,
Yeah.
a few people have ever discovered. I'm talking about something that is very general. I usually do an overview of this topic. My dissertation was focusing on music performance anxiety
Mm-hmm.
in guitarists, and how the guitar literature and psychology can be compared and their approaches to music performance anxiety. But it's really amazing to see how intense the response is and how high the demand is for this information, when I'm still speaking on a very general level about it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when I could speak about it with a little more precision and talk
Yeah.
about certain avenues of it that are unique, I think, but the very basics are still not well understood by the general musician
Mm-hmm.
population. So that's something that I'm trying to work on a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, could you tell us a bit more, maybe about like the specifics about your doctorate and what got you interested in music performance anxiety in the first place?
Yeah. So it's a little dark. Music performance anxiety is something that a lot of people think of as a kind of quirky thing or quirky neurotic trait that a lot of musicians have. Oh, they get so nervous when they get on stage.
Yeah.
It's no big deal though. But the problem is, I really do know people, and I'm sure you do too, who have
Hmm.
been adversely affected by it to the point where it's nearly destroyed their lives or it's fully destroyed their lives.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
and I when I was in my first year doctorate, I wasn't actually studying this topic.
Hmm.
I applied to U of T to study the music of R. Murray Schafer. That was my original project, and he only wrote two guitar pieces, and it's all very obscure music, but it's very interesting music, and I was really excited to do that. But then a good friend of mine committed suicide,
Oh, wow.
and Jonah Poplove, and he was a great violinist, and he went to Curtis. Actually, he eventually became a violist, but he went to Curtis for violin.
Hmm.
So he was a very, very accomplished musician,
Yeah, I bet.
really. And so I was really surprised when he died. It was very sudden, and I believe it was very related to that experience. And there are so many layers to this dragon. A lot of it goes into the realm of trauma as well. So not just trauma in the sense of past experiences on playing on stage that were humiliating, but also trauma in the sense of having teachers that can be abusive and things like this as well. So there are so many different layers to this
Hmm.
that actually go into really extreme, they overlap with a lot of really extreme mental health scenarios. So I see it as a very, very, very serious topic for musicians because it hits at the level of identity. And when something hits at the level of identity, it's a real problem.
Yeah.
A lot of musicians, one of the core issues for them is that we're trying to, untangle the identity they create for themselves as a musician, to untangle the music from the musician.
Hmm.
Uh, on a romantic level, it sounds very beautiful to think, oh, I am the music.
Yeah.
I am the music. The music is me. But the thing is, that's like saying the water in a fountain is the fountain.
Hmm.
I mean, the water emerges from the fountain, but it's not the fountain.
Right.
And similarly, the music emerges from you like a fountain, but it's not you.
Right.
And I think because we confuse those things, it seems like a subtle or overly nitpicky kind of analogy, but it's really important because when we believe we are the music, then when we play badly, we are bad.
Yeah, exactly.
If I have a bad concert, I am a failure, or I am trash, or that was garbage, I
Hmm.
was garbage. And we tend to paint things with these broad pictures and not see the clear image. Whereas the reality was usually, well, 95% of that was sounding musical and clean and enjoyable, and 5% of that didn't sound the way I wanted to.
Right.
Simply enough, like I didn't play the sounds I intended to make.
Hmm.
And to be able to think this objectively is one of the core aspects of developing training for music performance anxiety, because it's not really what we do when we're on stage that matters. It's what we do when we're in the practice room, and
Right.
how we approach our mindset when we're practicing
Hmm.
and approaching this whole process.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, so it's because it hits at the level of identity that is so problematic,
Yeah.
especially for singers. I think they have it worse than anyone else.
Yeah, because it's literally a part of them.
They are literally the instrument.
Right.
Yeah.
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 I think that's a really common issue in university, especially like the
Yeah.
high pressure and not having that kind of emotional and it's like psychological education. A lot of people never get to learn the skills that lets you separate from like that kind of like globalism where anything you
Hmm.
do is like your essential core. Do you have any things that you've learned, any strategies that have helped you kind of teach that aspect, or like in your personal life that have
Hmm.
helped you separate the musician from the music?
Yeah, well, one of the most important things for me is, to untangle what I call like the psychological tension. Like, I mean, physiological tension is not hard to understand. There's a lot of books written about that
Hmm.
and how you can release your tension when you play. You could just do yoga, do some tai chi,
Yeah.
do all kinds of different things. But what's also intense is the psychological tension. So one thing I like to do with my students and with myself is when a passage is frustrating me and I'm working on it for a long time, and I do many repetitions, it's not sounding good. What I try to do, if I've already done the other logical things like change the fingering if it's
Hmm.
not working and so on. What I like to do is release myself from the desire to impress others. So this comes from Kenny Werner's Effortless Mastery. It's a great book,
Hmm.
and you just drop your hands fully. So you just and what I like to do is when I tell people to drop their hands, what they usually do is this,
Yeah.
and their hand is still like
Uh-huh.
kind of tense, and it's like an overheated car.
Yeah.
That's basically what's happening, right? They get into this mindset, they get increasingly frustrated, and they get so what you have to do is you just tell them to drop their hands, release, drop the hands, and then wait until they can feel the blood flowing into their
Okay.
fingertips. And once they can feel that, you just ask yourself, you have this little statement we say, I release myself from the desire to impress others.
Okay.
I release myself from the psychological tension that I'm creating. I'm holding something up. I'm holding up others' expectations of me. And it's interfering and impairing my performance. It's interfering with my performance itself. It's actually making me play worse,
Right.
ironically, even though it's exactly the opposite of what we want.
Hmm.
So we release ourselves, and then when we do this, we try to step out. Studies have shown that people who are able to take the perspective of the audience or to look at themselves from an objective lens tend to play more effectively.
Okay.
And so what you do is you imagine looking at yourself from the back of your own head,
Okay.
and you observe yourself with as an alien observer.
Hmm.
You try to imagine you're like an alien studying humans, and you're watching them make this thing called music. It's bizarre. You don't have this on your planet, and you're watching them do this. How fascinating! And you don't you the key thing is to kind of remark on the fascination of it,
Yeah.
but to not get caught in judging. Oh, I like that sound. That sound is good. Or I don't like that sound. That sound is bad. And you
Right.
just watch yourself objectively with curiosity, with fascination. They call the word is dispassionate curiosity.
Hmm.
And when you watch yourself, it's exactly like meditation. If you're familiar with mindfulness practices,
Yeah.
this is virtually a mindfulness practice. And so as you do this, you play the passage, and invariably people play it better if they know it.
Yeah.
If they know it. Of course, the prerequisite is that you know it. So if you can't, if it's impossible to do it, or you don't understand the concept, then of course there's no magic trick to make you
Hmm.
able to play it. But this allows you to free that tension that's blocking you from being able to release it. And I find it's incredibly powerful, and it encodes that relaxation into the practice. And then when you actually go on stage, I find that it stays with me. So it's really effective. And this is probably the most powerful tool I've come across.
Yeah.
There's many other strategies, but this is one that I really I use in my daily life probably more than anything else.
Nice. Is this something that
Yeah.
you would like really encourage as incorporating into a part of your practice? Just like with every passage you play, you should just get into this kind of mindset, this objective curiosity, and just encode
Yes.
that into yourself.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Because what is really happening is like there's all this emotional content, all this like thought, all these thoughts that are appearing in our mind when we play, and generally when we have like what we call negative thoughts, or what a lot of people think of as negative thoughts, like anger or frustration or sadness or self derision, these sorts of things. When they appear, this is usually in response to a threat.
Hmm.
So it's all emotions and reactions and behaviors, mental or in physical, are actually they have a function, they have a purpose. Otherwise, you wouldn't do them,
Right.
right? And the function of those emotions is to protect you from a threat
Hmm.
and to close you off, so that you can have tunnel vision and escape the problem. So you're either gonna fight the problem, you're gonna run away from the problem, or you're gonna freeze,
Yeah.
play dead. right? And so when you're in that situation, it only a narrow set of possibilities is available to you, because you're looking and you're saying, oh, this is what I got to do. I got to practice it. And if I screw this up, everyone's going to hate me and no one's going to love me
Right.
anymore. And
Mm-hmm.
right. And so you can only see these narrow sets.
Yeah.
But positive emotions, they open us up. So they make us look outward, and they make us, oh, wow, how fascinating. They make us interested in things. And like positive, when someone's feeling positive, they're more creative, because they're looking out, they're considering things they hadn't thought, because they have the time. They don't feel threatened.
Right.
So what you're trying to do is give yourself that mindset that you're not threatened, you're just curious, and you're fascinated by the experience of what you're doing. And you're able to look at it with a kind of a curious lens, an almost absurd lens.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and this is this very very Zen concept. It's like to look at reality as a like a strange comedy.
Yeah. That's really
Because
nice.
that is what comedy really is, right?
Yeah.
Comedy is just a bunch of horrible things that happen to people, but we frame it in a context that makes it funny to us because we're not experiencing it.
That's
And
right.
that's basically, so if you're able to look at your own self that way, it's a lot more enjoyable, right?
Right.
So yeah, it's like so I don't know, that's how I see it.
Right.
But yeah.
So every performance is just a tragedy waiting to turn into a comedy.
Yeah, because look at the situation. It's ridiculous. You get up on stage and you're just making air pressure.
Yeah.
You're making the air pressure do the woo woo sounds because you moved your fingers like this, and you spend years making your fingers move so that
Yeah.
you can move them like this
That's
at
right.
this speed in this way to make that particular inflection of sound and frequency and color, and on the whatever harmonic spectrum. It's so fascinating, and you're doing this right all in the moment, and it's happening. And while this like miracle is happening, right, you're just feeling, wow, all these feelings are going through your body, like, oh my gosh, well, what are they thinking of us, what are they thinking of me, and we're so worried about all of the possibilities that could come out of it.
Mm-hmm.
We're worried about career problems that could happen if we make a mistake. We're worried about all these different things that are happening, and the situation is objectively not threatening.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because how often are humans in the primordial times, like, I mean, prehistory, how often are they really going to be sitting in front of a group of people with 200, 300, 400 people in front of them, and they're not trying to kill you? I mean,
Right.
it's like, so it's like, it makes sense in a way that we have that. But what's also interesting is that humans seem to like fear humiliation more than death
Yeah. Yeah.
in many cultures. So in many cultures, certain levels of humiliation mean that you
Yeah.
you commit seppuku, like, or there's something like this, right?
Yeah.
There are layers to this that are really powerful as well, and not fully understood as well.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a real thing, but objectively, if you look at it, I mean, no one is really harming you. You're playing music. I mean, so it's fascinating to me. One thing that I talk about a lot when I do interviews about this is my interest and fascination in MMA. And people are often really surprised by that. They say, "Why are you so interested in watching MMA or watching combat sports?" Because it's something I really like doing. I don't really like sports in general.
Yeah.
You'll never catch me watching hockey or anything, but you'll definitely catch me watching boxing or MMA or Muay Thai.
Yeah.
And the reason is because I am so fascinated by the literal danger that they put
Mm-hmm.
themselves in when they go in front of a crowd. I mean, when I go in front of a crowd of people and I play music, I am worried that I'll make a mistake, or I'm worried about whatever, but I won't get punched in the face.
Right.
It's like 99.9999% that's not going to happen. It's never happened to me yet in all the years of
Yeah.
performing in my life. And I don't know anyone it's happened to. So this is a very like, there would be a quantum absurdity if that happened,
Uh-huh.
right? So I mean, that's fascinating. But if you go in, I mean, as a Muay Thai fighter, and get into the ring, you're going to fight an elite level athlete who is training specifically to hurt you in the most intense way,
Yeah.
and that's fascinating. And how do they deal with stress?
Mm-hmm.
I find that they use a lot of the same tools we do. But what's also interesting is that we can gain a lot of information from their experience, because that is such an extreme reaction. Their
Yeah.
reactions are so violent to performing it. Most fighters, they don't talk about it very much until the end of their careers after it's done, because they're scared to show vulnerability. But they'll talk about how they experience the most adverse symptoms, like vomiting before having a fight, or they'll start crying spontaneously, and only the coach will ever be able to talk about this, and it will be
Wow.
like a hidden thing, and they have a lot of shame associated with that as well,
Hmm.
associated with their own reactions. GSP, a great Georges St. Pierre,
Yeah.
one of the most famous MMA fighters that ever lived, Canadian from Quebec. He also experienced these sorts of things. He says, "There's nothing scarier in my life that I've ever done than fighting."
Wow.
And and then it's also really interesting because we have not quite the same reaction, but we have an adverse reaction to performing, and it doesn't always feel enjoyable. Although
Hmm.
there are moments that are beautiful, there are moments that are truly special, But we have these challenges, but we still do it. Despite our better nature, we still get up there, and that shows you something about the values we're trying to connect with.
Hmm.
They're more powerful than us in so many ways. I mean, like the values of like wanting to connect with other people, to share music with other people, to share experiences, to share stories with other people, to understand yourself, to break through your limits as a human, to show people what they're capable of and inspire them. All of these things are really important, and that's what we really need to connect to when we do this. So
Hmm.
the long and short, I mean, I gave you the a short answer for one strategy we could use for music performance anxiety. You drop your hands, you release yourself
Yeah.
and stuff. That works on the short term, but on the long term, what really needs to happen is that people develop an understanding of the way they generally react to performing on
Hmm.
stage, and they learn to expect those feelings and be willing to experience that hardship in order to reach those values that matter to them.
Hmm.
And if they don't know what the values are, I usually, I usually ask the first question. Nobody puts their hand up. The first question is, what are your values? What matters most to you?
Yeah.
Never been asked that before,
Right.
and it's just crickets.
Yeah.
And then after that, you can ask, well, try to think of someone you admire. Uh, what are the qualities about them that you admire so much? And then think of a musician you really admire. What are the qualities that they have that um, really move you?
Hmm.
You know,
Do you think that
and what?
by putting the focus on others and like what you want to deliver to the world helps to take off like the personal stress that you feel in those situations?
Yes, yes, yeah. There is a kind of disturbing selfishness that is kind of inherent in all this, right? It's a self-absorption, right?
Hmm.
And it's not that we're at fault for having that, or that we're the only people that I don't feel that and others do. I mean, I definitely feel very self-absorbed when I play. I have a lot of challenges with that, and that's very related to it. So I'm not unique this way, and
Hmm.
no one is unique this way. But it's important that we know that, yeah, stepping outside of ourselves and taking the perspective of others is much more helpful. It can often help you open up a lot, as long as you don't try to read their minds.
That's right. That's a
That's one of
danger
the problems,
too.
right? That's the dangerous thing, right? So when you're on stage, a lot of people will try to mind read.
Yeah.
They'll see somebody who's just had a bad day.
Hmm.
I mean, I've been in concerts. Sometimes I make weird faces when I'm watching a concert,
Yeah.
not because of what the person is doing, but because I just, oh my god,
Yeah.
and I'll make a face like, oh, and then they'll think, wow, he must think that I'm playing so badly.
Yeah. Yeah.
It has nothing to do with
Yeah.
you.
Exactly.
You have no idea what
Yeah.
people are thinking.
Yeah. I remember
So,
this
but in the
one
moment,
concert I had exactly
yeah,
like that. There was this person in the front where they was
yeah,
like sitting like this the whole time. And I just thought they were so unimpressed by what they heard. And then afterwards they
yeah,
come up to me and they were like so happy, like, oh man, that was an awesome concert. Like you played that so good. I was like, oh, okay, well, I guess I need to not put any faith in that at all.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And always remember that when we're in under the influence of fight or flight, like
Hmm.
we're a little bit crazy. Like we're
Yeah,
not
yeah.
like our perception is not, in that sense, our perception of what others are thinking is not trustworthy.
Yeah.
The only thing you could be absolutely certain of is what you're experiencing.
Yeah.
You know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So if you just, notice, okay, this is what I'm hearing, this is what I'm, but even the things you're hearing sometimes I will hear mistakes. I'll be
Yeah.
like, oh my God, I totally screwed that up. And then I listen back in the recording, I wasn't no mistake at all.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That happens too. So
Mm-hmm.
that's strange.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah, it's very
Okay. So, more about performance anxiety. This is very interesting. What do you think was something surprising that you learned during this whole process? Something that's maybe like really maybe not in line with traditional views or convention that you've learned. Like what was something
Mhm.
really unique that you found during your research?
Well, one thing that I found that I was really shocked by, that was not really directly related to music performance anxiety, but was incidentally enough that I put it in my dissertation,
Mhm.
was that guitarists seem to have a much higher chance of getting focal dystonia than other
Oh,
instrumentalists.
that's interesting.
So focal dystonia, for those who don't know, is like it's a what we call like a hyperkinetic movement disorder. So what it means is you basically make involuntary motions when you're playing, and they're totally outside of your control. And they usually happen when you trigger another movement. So for some people who with focal dystonia, they'll move their I finger, and then their A finger will just naturally do this,
Yeah.
and it's completely involuntary, and it can destroy people's careers because it means that they're not able to play pieces. And a very famous guitarist who teaches at Manhattan School of Music, David Leisner,
Mhm.
had focal dystonia. He's written a lot about it. Actually, talk a lot about him. But anyway, it's what's really fascinating is that guitarists seem to have a higher incidence of this than any other cohort. And
Huh.
there's actually two major studies with decent sample sizes, one in Hamburg, Germany, one in Brazil, and they both, the Brazilian one had 3,000 people in the sample
Wow.
size,
Okay.
and they found that guitarists far and away had more incidences of music performance anxiety. And in the Hamburg, Germany study, they found that the guitarists were second. Classical guitarists were second in the incidence of music performance anxiety
Oh,
across the whole
wow.
group. But that doesn't make any sense
Yeah.
because, I
What's
mean,
that
there are
for?
more pianists. Of course, pianists were first, but there are far more pianists than there are guitarists, you have to assume, in Germany, right?
Hmm.
Maybe. And so there's something weird there. And I think part of the reason is because we're doing something different on both hands.
Right.
So there's also a high incidence in bass players, lute players. Uh, and what seems to happen is that when both hands are doing completely different motions, uh, the body can get very confused.
Huh.
And so one of the important things is that we like really enhance our mind body connection. Uh, and that can only be done when you're in a relaxed state, when you're
Right.
practicing,
Hmm.
when you're in a calm state and you're actually able to notice your motions one at a time. So it validates the importance of slow practice. It validates the importance of visualization, really strong visualization on both hands,
Hmm.
and the dangers of not visualizing one hand and visualizing just one.
Hmm.
So that can be problematic. It's so that I thought that was really shocking to me.
Yeah, it's very
And it seems
interesting.
like people who have higher incidences of music performance anxiety, this is very preliminary. They seem to have more incidence of focal dystonia than other
Okay.
people. Yeah, yeah.
Huh.
So I know a guy who used to say like, oh, everyone with focal dystonia, they're what we call IMFs. They're intense MFs. like, it's because like they usually have an approach to practicing that is really extreme, and
Hmm.
they're often self-taught as well.
Yeah.
They have limited instruction, and
Right.
so that can also interfere with it.
Hmm.
That I think that also probably plays a big role in classical guitar challenges,
Yeah.
because if you have a teacher who's teaching you properly, half the battle is just teaching you to not injure yourself.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's what technique really is. Half of technique is playing faster and cleaner and louder, and then the other half of technique is making sure you don't hurt yourself so you can do it for a long time.
Yeah.
And that second part gets missed if
Hmm.
you're self-taught sometimes,
Yeah.
because you're just listening for the sound and chasing it.
Yeah.
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 So
So
I
about
thought that was interesting.
yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah.
About mindful practicing, I've heard you mention that a lot. Could you maybe tell us a bit more about that and how you could incorporate that into your lessons so you can avoid some of these big dangerous problems that a lot of guitarists face?
Yeah, so I guess with mindful practice, one thing I like to do, I don't usually in the lesson have time to help someone do an actual meditation.
Uh huh.
Although I do have a meditation practice, and I meditated this morning. I meditate regularly. I would lie to you if I said every day. I'm not going to lie, but I strive for that,
Hmm.
and that is true. So, but meditation obviously helps, but what you can do is what they call like just making call signs, basically doing things that you that are actions that you call out as you're doing them.
Okay.
So one of the mindfulness exercises that I did, and when I did a Buddhist retreat, was I did walking meditation. When we did walking meditation, I would step, I would walk very very slowly, and when I'd step, as the moment that my feet hit the ground, I had to be very attentive to it. The moment that my left foot would hit the ground, I would say left.
Yeah.
And then the moment that the right foot landed, it would be right. So
Hmm.
left, right. And you just do this for a long time. And if you're ever having major distractions, you say and stop. And then you start again, right?
Hmm.
So similarly, when you're doing mindful practice, one thing you can do is, in a very traditional way, is to just count while playing.
Hmm.
That's a big one. To count out loud while you're playing, to do solfege out loud while you're playing. This is not new information.
Hmm.
This is something people have been doing for hundreds of years. But also, you can just name different experiences that you're having, just like um, noticing, noticing, noticing,
Hmm.
or worrying, worrying, worrying. You can notice mental phenomena that happen. You can notice when distractions are really aggressive. I have a student, and a lot of times I have to do it for her. She sometimes like like she holds her breath so much that she kind of chokes herself while
Oh
she's playing,
wow.
and she was just generally like she had challenges coming in
Hmm.
for previous things. And so what we did for a long time is I would just say, notice your breath, notice your stomach, notice your stomach, because I would start to see her tighten up, and she'd make this kind of squeaking sound, like,
Yeah.
and I would know, okay. And so just being able to call it out and gently practice not judging yourself for those experiences.
Hmm.
Because a lot of the things that we notice are strange. A lot of the thoughts that we have are bizarre. Some of them would get us arrested, you know? And so you have to just admit, okay, that was interesting, but that was a thought that emerged from me.
Yeah.
It's not me, right?
Hmm.
And I think that's just what you have to do, just kind of calling things out as they go. So counting while playing, doing solfege, I think those are the most powerful because they're music related.
Hmm.
But you can name things that your fingers are doing. You can name your fingers as you play them. You can name the fingerings you're using. So 1 3 4, 1 3 4,
Yeah.
or you can say M I M I M I M I. You can do things like this as
Hmm.
well. So it's really just about being attentive to what your body is doing, using mirrors when you practice, using other types of things to actually make you aware of what you're doing.
Hmm.
And that's the most important
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
This is all really
But
like high mental focus though to keep all of that in mind. So with
yes.
that, do you generally prefer shorter practice sessions so you can have that intensity of focus the entire time, or how do you
Um,
normally structure your practice time?
Well, my best practice time, which is not every practice, as we all know, every practice is variable in its level of focus and
Yeah.
attentiveness. But I'll just describe an ideal scenario, which happens a lot, and I tend to be more focused like this when I have an actual concert coming
Uh-huh.
up.
Yeah.
This just something about that. The pressure makes you focus. But what I use is a practice journal. So what I do is I have like 10-minute intervals. And I used to do this when I did practice streams with
Hmm.
concerts for the end of time. When I first started, I would list in an itemized order the things I was going to do.
Hmm.
And you do that as well. You talk about the different things, and you give yourself time limits to work on them. And so what I do is I give myself time limits to work on each individual task. And that means that 10 minutes is actually a long time if I have a timer.
Mm-hmm.
That means but the task has to be very small and
Yeah.
it has to be very manageable. So it's not going to be like play this piece perfect. That's never going to happen. 10 minutes. Okay. But what it can mean is play this section 10 times in a row and count out each repetition. One, as if you're working out. Like,
Yeah.
when we do workouts, we do like 10 push-ups and we count 1, 2, 3, 4. But we don't do that with reps when we're playing. And I find that that's helping me focus a lot. So
Mm-hmm.
doing these little things is helpful, and basically itemizing my practice with a prioritized list. And I give myself a time to do those. And that's how I do it. And that's how I practice today.
Yeah.
That's how I practiced yesterday. And I'm very in concert mode these 2 months.
Mm-hmm. That sounds like it would be
So
a really
yeah.
nice thing for the mental health as well, right? Because it's kind of like you're giving
Yes.
yourself avenues of success. Like you accomplish your goal and you accomplish the
Hmm.
next goal. So, do you
The
think?
small wins.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Do you think
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
things like that can help towards the performance anxiety? Just knowing that like you have this secured in the bag.
Yeah. I mean, one thing that is really important for anyone who's a teacher or anyone, who teaches uh, or has been taught is to think about the idea of like the process being more important than the result.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really hard. That's really hard. It's very easy to say theoretically, but it's difficult to do in practice, to really say like, well, did I work in a way that I felt confident with? Did I do my best in the sense that I I trained myself to do these tasks? Did I play it enough times in the practice room? And then you basically take the average, not the best performance that you
Mm-hmm.
gave at home, but the average of the performances that you recently gave at home. And you basically measure that against your performance on stage. And if that's a drastic gap, then we say music performance anxiety is the core issue. And then we want to target that
Mm-hmm.
specifically. But I think that, in general, it's understanding the nuances of every task we're doing,
Yeah.
understanding the mechanics of what we're doing, and being able to basically, I say, play with the confidence that you have when you hold a spoon.
Okay.
So a lot of people will say like, okay, like I'm not a confident person. Some people get up on there and they're so confident. You're so confident. Well, how are you so confident? Well, okay, whether or not that's true is not important. What is the real question is, there are some things that you are confident with, and everyone is confident with, and one of them is holding a spoon. It's like kind of universal across all cultures. Like if you're a person, you can probably hold a spoon, and you're
Right.
probably so confident at holding a spoon that you can do it while watching a video and have no impairment in your ability to land the
Right.
spoon in your mouth.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a very incredible thing, and you've only owned that ability. That was not an ability you had at birth. That was an ability that you actually trained
Yeah.
inadvertently from the time you were very, very young, and you got better and better. Walking is another example, right? So we want to train with that level of confidence, get to that level of confidence
Mm-hmm.
that it becomes automatic and free flowing. And but the problem with that, of course, is very simple. You might have been holding a spoon your entire life, but it doesn't take much for me to break someone's confidence. If you look at someone who's holding a spoon, you go, you always do that thing with the spoon when you hold. What? What do you mean? Like, what do you mean the thing I do?
Yeah.
Or do you always walk like that with your knees in that shape? You always
Right.
like, what? And all of a sudden, and all of a sudden, walking is like a strange experience for a
Mm-hmm.
moment, right?
Yeah.
So what we need to train ourselves to do is develop that level of confidence through repetition and through understanding to get to the level that we can play every passage with the comfort that we hold a spoon.
Right.
And then once we get that confidence, to have resilience in the confidence that we have, to note when we're actually overthinking
Mm-hmm.
or to note when that's happening. You can't stop yourself from overthinking. You can't stop yourself from doing those things, but you can name it when it's happening. You say
Yeah.
overthinking, overthinking, overthinking,
Yeah.
doubting, doubting, doubting. And then when you catch it, oh, yeah, I see what I'm doing there. Okay.
Yeah, nice.
It loses power. Right? Yeah.
So, what are some of the traits that you see in your students and friends and colleagues that consistently perform really well on stage, that like can keep that confidence and have the self-belief that what they've done is right and just execute in a way that's consistent with what they do in their practicing?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, because that's the more important question, really. Because we're not here to eliminate music performance anxiety. In fact, if you eliminated the symptoms of it, then you'd probably be a sociopath, or you probably wouldn't be
Yeah.
very interested in music.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't want to eliminate those feelings. What you really want to do is play your absolute best. And what are the traits that make someone consistently successful on stage? Well, I think this is really, really, really well documented in sports psychology, but not so much in music. But remember, there are billions of dollars ahead of us,
Mm-hmm.
right? Billions and billions of dollars. Like, think of the Olympics. Like, I mean, think of all of these different sports organizations that exist all over the world. All these sports psychologists that are fully licensed, that are have training programs all over the world. So they really do understand what they're talking about.
Yeah.
And what we consistently see is a controversial word, but we see three things. I'll tell you the first two are not controversial. The third one is. So we see three things in people who are consistently successful on stage. They have what we call psychological flexibility. So they're able to adapt to scenarios and reframe situations in the moment quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And they're able to remember their values. That's another important thing as well. There's a therapy called acceptance and commitment therapy that helps people develop their psychological flexibility. And it's basically mindfulness skills, being able to look at something and kind of step outside of it and see it objectively,
Mm-hmm.
be curious about the experience, to observe it with dispassionate curiosity, and to remember your values when you do something difficult. Okay. And then the second one is called is just self-compassion. It's your ability to forgive yourself for mistakes, and it's your ability to see mistakes as transient, and to see your actions and thoughts and behaviors as separate from your identity. To be able to see what's really happening and say, okay, I did a thing I was not proud of, or I did not accomplish the thing I intended to accomplish,
Mm-hmm.
but that doesn't mean I am bad.
Right.
That means the task didn't happen to my satisfaction, or I did something that was incoherent with my values. So that's compassion.
Mm-hmm.
So self-compassion, to develop that. And that requires you also to take the perspective of others, because most people are more compassionate to you than you are to yourself.
Right. That's true.
Right?
Yes.
Most people would never call you the names that you call yourself.
That's right.
You're on stage. Okay, at least I'm talking about myself, right? Okay, and then the third thing is it's slightly controversial, but it's not in the form of in sports psychology. It's mental toughness,
Mm-hmm.
and this is actually the most important one. And mental toughness is the hardest one to train, because it requires you to do things that are difficult. So
Right.
what mental toughness is, just to clarify, it's not a rigidness or an inflexibility. It's actually a type of flexibility. It's very, very closely related to psychological flexibility, to the point where it's almost the same.
Mm-hmm.
But mental toughness is basically your ability to chase challenges. So it's your ability to chase things that are difficult on purpose in order to achieve something.
Right.
And it's also to make a commitment to a plan and to keep with it. Now, TJ, I have to say, you are one of the most mentally tough musicians I've ever met in my life.
Thank you.
I mean, you do these 8-hour streams. This is incredible to me. I'm really, really inspired by this. And that's one of the core things that's related to success. I mean, that's given you so much success in so many different avenues. So mental toughness is really such an important thing,
Mm-hmm.
but it's also your ability to know, to take responsibility for whatever happens.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for example, let's say you do a competition and you lose, or you get third, you don't even get past the first round. Well, one person would say, oh, it's because the judges are idiots.
Right. Right.
That could be true. Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
But someone with an internal locus of control with a lot of mental toughness will say, regardless of whether that's true, I know that I can do this better next time.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even if the game is rigged, it has no impact on the level of preparation that you make.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. So that's what's really important. So it's to be able to take in what we call an internal locus of control.
Yeah.
And so those three things, I think they're self-supporting. If you have any of them in isolation, maybe psychological flexibility. If you have that in isolation, you're probably fine. But if you have only self-compassion, then you risk coddling yourself.
Right.
Right. You risk kind of, if you only have mental toughness, then you can sometimes, do really dangerous things that are just,
IMF.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, so you want a kind of balance between the three of them. It's like a triangle,
Mm-hmm.
and they kind of support each other. So those are the three things that I see in the most mentally tough, or the most successful musicians that I've met.
Mm-hmm.
They're insanely flexible. They're incredibly compassionate with themselves and others, and sensitive,
Mm-hmm.
and they're also very mentally tough. Like, it takes a lot to break them. They would, yeah. So
Yeah, that's awesome.
yeah.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about the mental side of thing, but maybe just a couple more questions. And while this is happening, maybe if the viewers want to start thinking about some things that they want to ask as well, it's a good time.
Nice.
But we talked a lot about mental health, but how about physical health? Do you do anything to keep physically fit and healthy? And do you think that's an important thing for being on stage as well?
100%. I mean, if you're playing a 60-minute program, I mean, you're running 5K. It's really like very a big deal. So it's really important that you train yourself to adapt to those pressures by doing things that are artificially challenging. And that's what I love about exercise. Of course, I you don't need me. You can ask, literally, you go anywhere on the website. You want to find the benefits of physical exercise, not difficult. I mean,
Yeah.
I agree with every single part of it.
Mm-hmm.
But I would not. There's nothing profound about me saying how important exercise is. It can
Yeah.
make, and whatever you do in your mental health practice, like physical exercise is going to double your money, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's tried and true across everything, right?
Yeah.
But if what I really think is underappreciated about the value of exercise, and the real reason that I do it, is because it's like something that is really difficult and artificially challenging. And because it's so difficult, and the results are so delayed, the actual gratification you get from working out is delayed by sometimes months.
Yeah.
Right. It can be weeks, months. Because of this, it trains you to develop your mindset as a person. And if you can do something that's artificially challenging like that, and do it on purpose, then when life kicks you in the teeth for whatever reason, then you'll be totally ready.
Yeah.
It won't bother you so much, right?
Right.
Because sometimes life is mean to us against our intention, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's invariable. Like, life is suffering. So if you're going to, I'm a Buddhist. I mean, what can you do? And so if that's true, then it's really important that we normalize suffering as long as it serves our values. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a kind of, it's not about kind of, I'm not exercising because I want to look like this person. I want to look like Brad Pitt. Like, no, like, it's not because I want to, be like this person who I'm not. The reason why I exercise is because I have a value of strength. I believe that strength is valuable.
Mm-hmm.
And it's valuable because when you are strong, you feel more capable of helping others. You have more space to actually offer something to others. And so developing that is really important, so being able to experience hardship in order to get towards that value is very meaningful. And of course, there's the endorphins, there's the positive effects. And of course, what I find is, I mean, it's like I have ADHD, and if you know somebody with ADHD, and I mean, they're usually very good at exercising.
Yeah.
They might hate doing it or initiating it, but once they do it, they're very, very good at it. And they get very involved in it, and it has a uniquely therapeutic impact on them compared to other cohorts.
Hmm.
And so, like for me, I feel like after I take ADHD, I don't have any of, or after I take after I exercise,
Yeah.
after I exercise, I have no kind of uh challenges that
Hmm.
I normally have in my day. I'm not thinking, oh, should I do this thing? Oh, I don't have that decision paralysis. I just say, I'm going to do the thing now, and then I just do it.
Nice.
And
Yeah.
so, and it's because my willpower and my mental toughness has literally increased.
Hmm.
Now, only very recently, and as of 2018, have we discovered an area of the brain that's actually associated with mental toughness, and
Really?
that's yeah, that's called the anterior mid-cingulate cortex.
Okay. Yeah.
So, and this area of the brain is really rare because, and it's very strange because it grows when we do things that we hate doing.
Oh, interesting.
So when we say, well, if you hate running like a lot, then if you run, like I've been doing these 20-kilometer runs and stuff and doing all this crazy stuff. Like when you do those things, then what you'll notice is that that area of the brain grows. But if you like running and running is your favorite thing in the whole world, then it won't grow
Right.
if you run. Even if other people think it's difficult, it doesn't matter. It has to be something that's actually challenging to you.
No, that's really
So,
interesting.
but this area is associated with tenacity, your ability to stick to something that you've started and continue it to completion. And it's also associated with your ability to like your kind of will to live, it seems like.
Yeah.
You're actually your ability to your length of life and your health span as well.
Huh.
So
Interesting.
it's pretty impressive because there's a lifespan and a health span,
Yeah.
and the health span is how long you live without being disabled by age,
Yeah.
right? And so that actually increases when this area grows, and the only way to grow it is to do things that are challenging. So it's very interesting to see how mental toughness is associated with that
Yeah. It's
as
very
well. So
fascinating.
I feel that, and of course, physical exercise is, we're talking about mental toughness. You're probably not going to gain mental toughness through music in a healthy way as easily,
Yeah.
because when you push yourself to that level of strain on guitar, you're probably going to risk injury very easily, or you're going to sacrifice the focus and thoughtful practice that you need for a kind of a repetition kind
Hmm.
of practice that's more mindless. So this is more likely, although it's not always the case. Some people just have more focus, and you gain more focus by doing these long practice sessions for long.
Yeah.
So you probably, if you do 4 hours, you probably practice for a lot more than somebody who's never done 4 hours in their life,
Yeah. For sure.
because you're used to these 8 hour streams. Um, yeah, so it's very interesting how
Yeah. Yeah.
that
That's really
all
cool.
plays together. Yeah.
I think one of the things for me that's quite difficult about all of these mindfulness things and all these practices towards getting better, uh, I guess, responses to performance anxiety is that it's kind of hard to have like a concrete exercise of like what should I do? Like how should I track my progress? How should I
Mm.
find a way to like measurably be following this successful strategy while like knowing that it's working. And it seems like this seems like a really interesting mechanism for how you could like really track that progress, the like cultivating of that mental toughness through other avenues beyond just music.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And when it comes to music performance anxiety, it is a good question you're asking. Like, what really, how do you know it? How do you know you're kind of dealt with it? Well, it's important. Just like a brief background without going too far into it is, it's important to know that what's really happening when we experience that fight or flight is not always negative.
Mm-hmm.
So just because your heart rate is racing, or just because your hands are sweating, just because your knees are weak, arms are heavy, there's vomit on your sweater already, mom spaghetti, just because all that's happening doesn't mean that you are that something bad is happening to you.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean that it's negative. What makes it bad is when we decide that it's bad.
Right.
So a good example is, I could give you an example. You're sweating and your heart is racing and you feel breathless. Well, you could be having sex.
Yeah.
And most people think that sex is good. Or you could be playing your favorite video game, or you could be doing something enjoyable, right?
Hmm.
You could be going out in the park, or you see someone you've never seen in years, and these will all elicit those same responses,
Yeah.
but we don't call those negative experiences.
Right.
But if we have those exact same physiological variables and we see them happen in another context, i.e., performance, we say, "Oh, my heart is racing. Oh, all these things are happening. This must mean that there's something wrong with me.
Right.
I need to make this feeling go away." And that's what we really want to catch.
Hmm.
It's that avoidance of experience.
Yeah.
It's that feeling that my thoughts and feelings are wrong. I shouldn't be having them. Make them go away. Often we'll become very desperate to make the feelings go away. But if we actually sit with the feeling and we allow it to exist and we name it and we get to know it, is this easier to do in practice than in a challenging environment.
Hmm.
But when you actually get to know the experience, then you can normalize the experience and you see, "Oh, this is fascinating." Oh, so what I often do is an exercise. We ask people, they say, "Well, I feel so nervous playing for you," and I say, "Well, what do you notice?" I say, "I don't know. It's just it's horrible." I go, "Well, what part of the body is the loudest?
Hmm.
What do you notice the most?" And I say, "Well, it's in this area in my chest. It's like it's just oh, and how does it feel? It just feels like ah." They often won't be able to articulate it.
Yeah.
They'll have like a alexithymia is what that's called. Is being unable to articulate your inner experience, right? And so you'll say, "Well, how do you can you tell me what color the feeling is?" Oh, they'll say, "What?" It's like red. And I'll be like, "Oh, well, like is what texture is the feeling? Is it smooth or is it rough?" It's smooth. You know, is it salty or is it sweet? What? It's and they'll be able to answer you.
Uh-huh.
What's very bizarre. And so gradually, the more flexible they are, the easier they can do this exercise, the
Hmm.
faster their responses will be. And just being able to get to know it and kind of explore it this way allows you to kind of demystify the experience.
Hmm.
It feels less like this, like almost like apparition attacking you, and it's more like an experience you're befriending.
Right.
So, um, so that's important. So it's important to know that the subjective experience is what determines whether it's really anxiety or whether it's just what we call arousal,
Right. Yeah. I hear that
which is like when your body,
the term
yeah,
reframing come up a lot in
yes,
sports psychology, and this seems like a really nice way to tackle that.
yeah. So that's really important. So going back to your question, I guess a really circular way of answering it. What is how do you really know your music performance anxiety has decreased in a functional way
Hmm.
without impairing your performance or impairing your love for the music? Well, it's basically when you're not surprised. And people hate that answer because it's not very satisfying. It's like it's when I play and I'm one with the music and I'm third eye unlocks and it's just
Yeah.
it's like, well, no, it's when I play and I'm not surprised or shocked by the
Yeah.
experiences that I have. Is when you've made friends with your experience and you play the way that you played in the practice room.
Hmm.
And so like as long as you're objectively listening to yourself when you practice and recording yourself when you practice and noticing your physiological responses when those responses happen on stage, and they tend to be a little more amplified. So if you're experiencing a 3 in intensity, it's probably going to be a 4 or 5. When you notice that on stage, you're no longer shocked by it, and you're not resisting the experience or
Yeah.
trying to run from it. That's how you know. And that's actually a measurement of psychological flexibility. It's your ability to overcome avoidance. So that's what's really important. So
Nice. Thank you very
yeah,
much. Yeah. Okay, so
yeah,
let me go find some viewer questions and maybe we'll we'll round it off with that. Let's see. Okay. One question that I got quite a lot of was regarding beta blockers. So, what
Oh
are your
yeah.
thoughts on beta blockers for performance anxiety? And do you have any experience with it yourself? You don't have to answer that one, but
No, no, I will answer it. So propranolol is really commonly prescribed for heart conditions that
mhm.
people have, and and they're called beta blockers. So this type of category of drug is called a beta blocker. Propranolol is the most popular one, and a lot of people say that it helps them with music performance anxiety. Um, Now, this is one of the most hotly debated parts of that field. It's something that uh, is really very polarizing in that scientific community. And so you'll find that a lot of people are really against beta blockers. A lot of people are really for it. A lot of people have a more balanced view. Naturally, I think the more balanced view is important. So uh, I think that beta blockers are only problematic for one reason. And the only reason that I advise people against them is, well, first of all, I'm not that kind of doctor. So
Right.
it's important to know that, I'm not a medical doctor. I'm not an MD. So there's no world in which I'd ever be able to prescribe or recommend that someone take them in the first
Hmm.
place. Okay. That's important. And it's also important that if someone was taking them, I would not have the authority to recommend that they stop taking them.
Yeah.
Okay. But this is going to be, I'm just going to give you like a balanced argument for why they're helpful and why they're not. Why I think they're unhelpful is for a long-term purpose. Yes, they will help you. Probably you'll play with less nervousness. And a lot of people I respect who play brilliantly use them.
Hmm.
Okay. And I don't judge those people. I don't think that they're any less players than I think. Uh, they're dealing with high pressure scenarios and they need that edge. Okay, fine. But what the important thing is they're not listening to what the anxiety can teach them.
Right.
Now, I've said that to people, and they say, "Well, screw you. I don't have time to deal with that when I have a concert next week." Okay, fair. Okay, I'm not judging you. Okay, I'm just saying this is what I really
Hmm.
have noticed, and there is a propensity to fall into avoidance when we use propranolol, and the
Hmm.
problem is that once we start using it, it's not really addictive in the traditional sense. But the problem is that once you take it, there's a risk that it starts to become a part of your performance ritual.
Right.
And without taking it, it's like the idea of performing is not possible.
Hmm.
So it's important to ask yourself, like, when I experience these feelings, what is the anxiety saying? Like, what are the symptoms that I'm experiencing? I'm not trying to block them out. I'm trying to notice them. What are they? And when I notice them, can I get to know them? Like, my heart rate is racing. How fast is it going? How much does it change? What color is the feeling? These sorts of things. And being able to face these increases your mental toughness and it increases your psychological flexibility. So you're missing the opportunity to gain those two things
Right.
by avoiding the feeling. So that's the only reason why I think it's not a great long-term solution. I think it's an okay short-term solution for people who have extreme situations. The only time that, you know, like, I know some people who take them when they do competitions,
Hmm.
because competitions are, I've never taken them ever, because I really want, I've done many competitions and I don't intend on taking them for a competition ever,
Yeah.
because I want to see how I react under that scenario. I'm actually there. The reason I do a competition is not to beat someone else. It's a stupid concept in music. It's because I want to do the hardest thing.
Yeah.
Like, I
Increase
want
your
to
mid
see, like, am I
anterior
really
cingulate
able,
cortex.
like, I want to do, yeah, I want to do the thing that is like the most challenging thing, the worst case scenario
Yeah.
audience I can ever have. A bunch of people who are literally judging me, some of which want me to fail. I mean, if I can survive that audience and play well,
Hmm.
I mean, I'm unstoppable, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Right. And that's why people who do competitions invariably play extremely high level when it's there's a relationship, right?
Right.
So anyway, so that's why I'm there, and I miss that opportunity if I take beta blockers. But if you are going to take them, that's probably the only scenario where it really makes sense long term, because those scenarios they have such hair thin margins.
Yeah.
So people who are extremely anxious, who have uncontrollable sweating, who have uncontrollable heart rates when they play. When your heart rate is for people whose heart rate goes over 200 BPM when they're playing, right? This can also be a type of person that might actually just need them in general. So you would have to talk to a doctor if that's the case. And there's ways to make your heart rate lower, like exercise.
Yeah.
If you run a lot, your resting heart rate will decrease, and then your heart rate and performance will decrease. And I noticed these days, since I've been working out a lot, doing Muay Thai, doing a lot of running, all these different things. Since I've been doing this, I mean, when I go on stage, that's not the problem. I don't find that that's the thing that's challenging me. The problem is like, it's a warm room. I need to tune the guitar properly. Like, it's little stuff like this. It's mechanical things that bother me. But that's always been the bother.
Yeah.
That's always been the challenge. So just got to solve that, improve that. Good.
I've got a follow-up question on that.
Yeah.
What about the, like, I guess the feeling that you'll be at a disadvantage if everybody else is taking beta blockers and they don't have that kind of stress and negative physiological responses happening compared to you who is not taking them?
Well, a lot of people who take beta blockers, it's not all good. Like, some people who take them will report that they feel less connected to the music, or they'll report that they feel like the music is they're just playing it and their hands are just moving, and they don't feel as connected emotionally with the piece. That can often be a challenge. Sometimes having that extra level of arousal will, actually help you play at your best. It depends on what we call, it's called the zone of optimal performance.
Yeah.
And every person has a zone of optimal performance. And it depends on the type of risk profile you have as a person. So it's not like a financial risk profile. It's like a literal risk profile. Like, how much risk can you tolerate in your general life and feel optimal? So for some people, they need a certain level of risk to even feel like they're focused.
Right.
And so that's someone who has a high tolerance. And then there's some people where a minimal level of risk sends them over the edge. As someone with a low tolerance. So that person they're different people. So it's important that you kind of take all that into consideration. It really, yeah.
Yeah.
So could you? Sorry, I forgot what the original question was.
They were just commenting, I guess, about the disadvantage that you might be in compared to somebody who is taking a beta blocker. But I think that's
right. That's basically what answers it. I mean, I think what I get my power on. Everyone gets their power from something else. Everyone gets their power from some aspect of their playing. Every people are unique, right? And so for me, I get my power on stage from the intensity of the energy that I give off when I play. I think that that's something that I like about my own playing. There are other characteristics. I could tell you a bunch of things I would like to improve and whatever, but those are things that I do appreciate about my playing, and I appreciate in other people. Some of my favorite performers, I feel like they walk this line. There's a kind of danger there's a danger I feel when they play, and I like that. That's there's something very exciting about that. And if you can harness that energy and walk that line and not fall off it, I mean, that's a more objectively exciting performance. So if you can still maintain your composure and then still play with the level of proficiency and precision that you've trained to do, then taking the beta blockers would be disadvantageous.
Yeah.
For me.
Yeah, makes sense.
So that's my experience.
Awesome.
Because some of the performances where I felt the most relaxed, they were the ones I never got past first round. Right. Some of the performances where I feel like, oh my god, I got, those are the ones I won.
Yeah.
So it's always like that. So it's very strange.
Yeah.
All
right. Well, to round things off, I was just wondering, do you have anything that you wanted to say before we call everything a day?
Well, thanks for having me, and I'm looking forward to giving the concert as well as the music performance anxiety lecture at the Vancouver Classical Guitar Fest. I want to thank Luis for having me. Luis Medina is an awesome guy, and I'm really happy that he's running this festival and is bringing all these great people. It's going to be great to see Ileana again, and to see Jeff as well, Jeff McFadden. He was my doctoral supervisor as well, so it's going to be good to hang out with all of them in Vancouver. And I'm really excited that I get to play a concert because you can all go and you can see where I'm putting my money where my mouth is.
That's
that's really important. That's really why I do this, is so that I can sort of hold my own self accountable. And I feel that this project has given me a better lease on life, because I'm not I'm not thinking like an academic. I really am only recommending things to people that I would do myself. And have done myself. So I hope that helps foster a little bit of confidence in the methods. And maybe they don't. Who knows? I always risk that, and I think it's worth that risk. So it's
absolutely.
good. Yeah.
Well, if anyone wants to go see Daniel put his money where his mouth is, then you can come to the Vancouver Festival, Vancouver 11th to 14th at Capilano University. You can go to vancouverguitar.org and find tickets to the festivals, and of course, there's the early bird thing up until June 1st. So yeah, if you're in the area, come watch. I'll be there. Daniel will be there. Everyone is just super high level at this festival. All the faculty are just outstanding, and you can tell from the interviews so far and the ones to come that everyone just loves what they do, and they've got their own unique perspectives and amazing things to say, and it's all super valuable. So yeah, take it.
And it'll be great. And it'll be great after all these years to finally meet you in person, TJ.
Yes.
Because we've been circling each other so much, and we've never actually gotten to meet in person.
Right,
So it's great. We've watched each other practice for hours on stream. It's really strange, but we, for some reason, have never met in person. So I'm really excited for that.
Yeah.
It's gonna be great. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. Well, anyways, let's call it there. So thank you so much for showing up, and we'll look forward to having you at Vancouver.
All right, and thanks for having me. Awesome.
Yeah, take care.
Great. Okay, see you.
Bye.
Goodbye.